Welcome to Baha'i Critic. Today we'll look at the harmony of science and religion. Whenever a religionist faces a discrepancy between their religion and science, they usually take one of these two options. Either they'll want their religion to bend the knee. In this case, their excuse is that they mistranslated or misinterpreted their sacred text. Therefore, it was always in conformity with science. Or they'll want science to bend the knee to their religion. In this case, though, their excuse is that science is not advanced enough. Therefore, it will affirm their sacred texts in the future. As an example, we'll look at the 3 historical inaccuracies found in the Tablet of Wisdom by Baha'u'llah. This is the passage in question. It says that Empedocles, who distinguished himself in philosophy, was a contemporary of David. The difference between the median of their lifespans is almost 500 years. So in what sense did Empedocles, was he a contemporary of David? To continue on, it says that while Pythagoras lived in the days of Solomon, son of David. So in what sense did Pythagoras live in the days of Solomon if the median of the lifespans if the difference between the median of the lifespans is over 400 years. Also notice that in this context, being a contemporary of someone is the same as living in the days of someone. Also, this quote implies that Empedocles predated Pythagoras. So let's look at Abdu'l-Baha's response. And you find it in this paper by Peter Terry. Terry provides a provisional translation of a tablet by Abdu'l-Baha, where he specifically addresses this matter. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to read it all to you. I'm just going to summarize it for you. So Abdu'l-Baha says that before Alexander the Great, history was transmitted by word of mouth, and after was it compiled or put together. This is obviously incorrect, because before Alexander the Great, there were a bunch of Greek historians who wrote shit down and did transmit it to us. Now you could argue as only 100 years, you're nitpicking, blah blah blah. But keep in mind that Abdu'l-Baha is not only considered to be infallible, but had superhuman knowledge. Okay, you expect a lot more from man. You expect a lot more accuracy from a man who has superhuman knowledge. And then he goes on to say that before Alexander the Great, in the same tablet, Abdu'l-Baha says that before Alexander the Great, history was extremely confused. And only after did it become orderly and systematized, which is obviously incorrect. But he says that this matter is thoroughly established by all authoritative historians. And he goes on to say that before Alex, history was replete with contradictory accounts, great diversity of opinion, and all the other shit. So it comes to the most logical conclusion. Don't rely on history before Alexander the Great. This is a common tactic I find by a lot of religious fanatics. Whenever science or some field of, say, social science contradicts their religion or some aspects of the religion, what they do is they try to shoot the field down, try to poke holes into it, undermine its credibility. That's precisely what Abdu'l-Baha is doing. And it's dishonest. Well, anyways, so some Baha'is will argue, what if there's a third option, What if religion and science simply go their own separate ways? So in this case, their excuse is that our religious leaders used contemporary knowledge to teach spiritual truths. Therefore, our sacred texts are not a source of scientific knowledge. But the problem with this, it seems reasonable, But the problem is that Abdu'l-Baha in the same tablet refutes it. He wrote, Holy Writ, referring to the Baha'i writings, is authoritative, and with it no history of the world can compare. The most important thing is to establish the validity of God's universal manifestation, referring to Baha'u'llah. Once his claim proveth true, then whatsoever he may choose to say is right and correct. Sorry, man. Nice try. So it's obvious that Abdul Baha took this position, endorsed this position, where you try to make science bend the knee. Now, Robert Stockman wrote the following. Modern historians would view the dates as extremely reliable, with errors of a few years to a decade at most. A greater change in the dates would violate radiocarbon dates, ancient Egyptian written records, and do severe violence to ancient Greek histories. Cole even notes that the statement of Muslim historians that David, Solomon, Empedocles, and Pythagoras were contemporaries contradicts the general Muslim historians' understanding of ancient dates, which are usually only a few decades different from modern dating. So in short, Abdul Baha is dead wrong. Now let's look at Shoghi Effendi's response. And he wrote that we must not take this statement, it's referring to the passage from the Tablet of Wisdom that I quoted earlier. You must not take this statement too literally, which is fucking weird, because if I said George Washington lived in the days of Trump, or George Washington was a contemporary of Trump, and then when you told me what the fuck, and I said, listen, don't take this statement too literally, you know it's pretty dead. It's pretty bullshit, right? It's bullshit. Anyway, Shoghi Effendi continues and he says contemporary, quote unquote, contemporary may have been meant in Persian as something far more elastic than the English word. And again, what the fuck? The Tablet of Wisdom was written in Arabic. And lastly he continues and he says, likewise, the whole translation probably needs revising. Probably. He doesn't know. Now, it's obvious that Shoghi Effendi took this position, endorsed this position, where he makes religion bend the knee. Oh, oops, we mistranslated our sacred text. How silly of us. So, you have the guardian and you have the master taking two opposite approaches to solving this dilemma. How interesting. Anyways, in the Tablet of Wisdom, there are two footnotes. Okay, same shit. And it says that in the passages that follow concerning the Greek philosophers, Baha'u'llah quotes verbatim from Shahrastani, a Muslim historian. And in this paper by J. Cole, no, not the hip-hop artist, so here, and so J. Cole provides translation from the works of Shahrastani. And so you have this passage from the Tablet of Wisdom that we covered earlier, and here you have the passage from Shahrastani. So Empedocles was a contemporary of David, the prophet, peace be upon him. He went to him and received knowledge from him, and he studied with Luqman the wise and obtained wisdom from him. So this is what Baha'u'llah meant when he says that Empedocles distinguished himself in philosophy, because Shahrastani wrote that Empedocles received knowledge from David and wisdom from Luqman. And another passage from Shahrastani, it says Pythagoras, he referring to Pythagoras, lived in the days of Solomon, the prophet, son of David, peace be upon him, peace be upon them, and acquired wisdom from the treasury of prophethood. So what's color coded yellow, it's what's Baha'u'llah quoted verbatim, and what's white is what he paraphrased from Shahrastani. So look at a diagram, a little more elaborated form. So when people would take this position, when you try to make science bend the knee, the problem is that they have two options. They can either condone other religions to use this justification. The problem with this is that you end up with you end up condoning a lot of crazy shit, like how Joseph Smith says that Native Americans are Israelites, or Mirza Ghulam Ahmed said that Jesus died in India. which both, by the way, are 19th century prophets, by the way, self-proclaimed prophets. Or you can condemn other religions to use as justification, but you end up having a double standard. How convenient. Now anyways, this is a argument that I composed against the concept of infallibility using the tablet of wisdom. It's pretty straightforward. If Baha'u'llah wrote the tablet of wisdom, and according to the tablet of wisdom, I'm not going to go through it, fuck it. Anyways, you can read it for yourself. I think it's pretty sound. Now, why is it so important? Now, some Baha'is may argue that I'm, digging mountains out of mill holes and all the other shit. The problem is that Shoghi himself said that the whole theory of divine revelation rests on infallibility of the prophets. If they're not infallible, then they're not divine. So it is a big deal. Alright, thank you for watching.